You know that feeling, right? You're in a conversation, it's about something important, and then suddenly it just goes completely off the rails. It ends in frustration, nobody feels understood. Well, what if there was a better way to talk to each other? A way to actually get past the arguments? Today, we're going to look at a group that's trying to do just that. Let's dive into the Guide to Better Conversations from the Ottawa Intellectual Dialogue.
First things first, let's follow the group's own practice and start with a land acknowledgement. It's a recognition that we are on the traditional home of Indigenous peoples and a commitment to the ongoing process of learning and reconciliation. It's a really powerful way to ground a conversation in respect right from the very beginning.
So, how are we going to break this all down? We're going to walk through 5 key ideas. First, we'll get to know the group and its mission. Then, we'll look at the ideal space they're trying to create. From there, we'll dive into the psychology of why our conversations break down in the first place, explore a really cool model for how to structure a good talk, and finally, we'll land on the one practical skill that makes it all happen.
All right, so who are these people trying to fix our broken conversations? Let's start with the group at the center of it all.
Meet the Ottawa Intellectual Dialogue. They got started back in 2019, founded by a group of graduates from different Canadian universities. They basically looked around and saw this huge gap between, deep academic debates and the really polarized way people were talking in public, and they wanted to build a bridge. Their whole mission really rests on 3 pillars. It all starts with creating an environment that's both safe, so you can actually say what you think, and scientific, meaning it's rigorous and evidence-based. In that space, they tackle the big questions, stuff that's both super current and timeless. But the ultimate goal, the real point of it all, is to create a space where genuine, open dialogue can actually happen.
But creating a space for good conversations isn't just a nice-to-have idea. For this group, it's actually based on a really important philosophical concept. So let's get into the why, the big idea that's guiding this whole project.
What they're trying to build is something called a public sphere. And this isn't just any old internet forum. It's a special kind of space in society, one that's separate from the government and the market, where we as citizens can come together to freely debate issues, really kick the tires on ideas, and maybe, just maybe, find some common ground.
Now, for a public sphere to actually work, it needs to run on 3 key principles. First, the conversation has to be free. No censorship, no pressure. Second, it's got to be about issues that concern all of us. And third, and this is a huge one today, it has to be independent. It can't be influenced by political agendas or corporate interests. That's a massive challenge.
Okay, so you've got the mission and you've got the ideal space, but that's not enough if the people in the space are talking past each other. This is where things get really fascinating, because the group uses a psychological model to help us understand what's going on inside our own heads when we talk. Before we dive in, just pause for a second and think about this question. When you're in a discussion, maybe even an argument, which part of you is really doing the talking? So this model, which comes from psychiatrist Eric Berne, says we all operate from 3 ego states. There's the parent, which is like a tape recording of all the rules and beliefs we got from our parents, the shoulds and should-nots. Then there's the child, which is where our emotions, our curiosity, and all our old reactions live. And finally, there's the adult, our rational, objective self that's just responding to the here and now. The goal, the absolute sweet spot for any good conversation, is an adult-to-adult transaction. My rational present self is talking directly to your rational present self. See how those lines are parallel and clear? That's the foundation for real understanding. Conflict happens when we get a crossed transaction. So imagine one person asks a simple adult question like, "Hey, where'd you get that data?" But the other person hears it as an attack and replies from their defensive child state, like, "Why are you always questioning me?" The lines of communication literally cross, and the conversation just slams to a halt. And that abstract diagram of crossed lines? In real life, it feels exactly like this. What was a simple question suddenly feels like an attack, and the other person just shuts down. Any chance for a real conversation is totally lost. So if we need to have these adult-to-adult conversations, what kind of shape or structure should the conversation itself have? Well, the group uses another brilliant metaphor to explain their approach to this. Okay, on the left, you see the tree. It's hierarchical, it's rigid, it has a clear top and a bottom. This is like a traditional lecture or a top-down meeting. But on the right, you've got the rhizome. Think of a network of ginger root. It spreads out horizontally, connecting all these different points in totally unexpected ways, and there's no single center. This is the decentralized exploratory model that they're aiming for.
So what this actually means is that a rhizomatic conversation isn't hierarchical. No single person is in charge. It works like a network where the path isn't planned out ahead of time. And what's really cool is that the final insight, the big takeaway, isn't known when you start. It actually emerges from the shared experience of the conversation itself.
So we've got the right mindset and we've got the right structure, but what's the one practical skill, the secret sauce, that makes all of this actually work?
It all comes down to this: active listening. It's the engine that drives adult-to-adult communication. It's what allows a rhizomatic, open-ended conversation to actually grow. It's how you create that safe, scientific space we talked about at the beginning. And they break it down into 2 simple steps. The first is attending. That just means being fully present, physically and emotionally. This is what helps keep you in your adult state. The second is following. This is where you use tools not to win an argument, but just to understand. We're talking about asking open-ended questions, offering encouragement, and even just using silence to let that rhizomatic path emerge.
Which brings us to our final thought. A huge goal of this entire process is to question the things that we all just assume are true. So let me leave you with this question. What's one obvious belief you hold that might just be worth re-examining through a truly open dialogue?